one podcast, mining the Magic the Gathering subreddits for salt. This is the Howling Salt Mine.
It's the Howling Salt Mine. The Howling Salt Mine.
Well, welcome back, prospectors, to another episode of the Howling Salt Mine podcast, the podcast where we delve into those salty mines of the Magic the Gathering subreddits, find the salty posts that we know and love, and we bring them back out, read them to you guys, talk about them, analyze these salty situations. What? You don't like analyze? We're analyzing these situations, Tony.
Yeah, we are.
As always, I'm your host, Sam, and I'm joined, you already heard from him, but I'm joined today. Fuck. You're messing me up. I'm all messed up. I'm joined today by my two co-hosts, Mike and Tony. Say hey, guys.
Hello, peeps.
Howdy.
Coming through crystal clear today, Mike.
Yeah, I the last one I recorded from my bathtub at a distance of about 10 feet. So and it was really difficult to speak through the scuba mask as well. So hopefully my audio is a little bit crisper today. Sorry about that.
Oh man. Yeah, it's super crispy.
It's terrible. We record that whole episode, and then on the first listen back of even like a tiny segment of it, it's like, oh no.
Yeah. You're like, was this wrong?
I feel like it's the era of the web-based communication apps though, because like you did sound good to us when we were recording, but it's like, I don't know about you guys, but like for work, especially, every time I switch between Teams or WebEx or Amazon Chime or Zoom, like it changes my audio device like every fucking time. Like every app I go into, it changes. Like
totally.
My computer decides what it's going to pick that day. And I'm like, great, what the fuck ever. Like,
yeah, that shit's so frustrating.
It doesn't help that there's like a USB plugged into every single port on my desktop. Yeah. And so there's like just a million wires coming out of it.
It just sounds like maximum efficiency, bro.
I will say I do take company conference calls from my podcasting mic, and everyone's always like, Sam, your audio is so crispy and amazing. I'm like, yeah, thank you.
Thanks. I take professionalism really seriously.
Yeah. Thanks. Can I get a raise?
Yeah, right. That sounds so crisp. I think I'm deserving of a raise.
Exactly.
I just have like a separate personal setup, and I haven't made I wanted to get like a Switch and be fancy and like do all this stuff, but I was like, this is like too much fucking work.
That's what I have. I have this is super boring audio content, but I have like a USB hub that has a switch on top, and I can switch between my work laptop and my personal laptop without plugging anything back in, which is fucking sick.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's harder to do that when you have a PC and a laptop, and even harder when it's a PC like Windows and then a fucking Mac, like that they don't play nice with one another.
I mean, the USB thing would still work.
Yeah.
No, they still work, but I tried like some, and I was like having some issues with it.
Yeah.
And everything I was reading kept coming back to like this doesn't like to play as well with Macs, and like because also I have like weird shit that I want to plug in. It's like not necessarily just USB stuff.
Yeah.
Like what?
I'm just a problem child.
Like your wiener into a USB slot.
Yeah. No, that only. I was about to diss myself and be like, no, it only fits in USB-C. Which like, is actually smaller. Like, that was my immediate reaction. Whatever. I'm over this conversation.
Yeah, we're children. Yeah, and I'm sure the listeners are over this too. They're like, what the fuck are you talking about? So other than our computer setups, what's new with you guys?
Well, I wanted to say that today I actually scanned the last loose card of my collection. So I now have a fully digital list of all my cards.
Wow.
You gave yourself a birthday present.
I did.
Happy birthday again.
Oh yeah, it's Tony's birthday today.
It is for all the fans out there.
And no one sent any listener mail wishing him a happy birthday. So
That's
I
kind
hope
of fucked up.
There better be a lot of like belateds on the way in, you know.
Yeah, I'm expecting
sure.
lots of belated
It's
happy
honestly pretty
birthday
fucked up.
fan mail.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
You guys fucking suck.
If Tony dies in the next week, you guys will feel really
Yeah, you'll feel
about
bad
that.
because I won't even hear it.
You would have made your peace.
Yeah. Well, this is coming out on I think this episode's coming out on Thanksgiving. So it's not actually Tony's birthday today. It was 6 or 7 days prior.
True life. The magic of recording.
Exactly.
That's why they need to be really belated.
Yeah.
Actually got into a time vortex and it wasn't my birthday when this happened,
So tell us about that list, Tony. What are you going to do with that? Why did you do that?
So I did it because I was realizing that I was doing a lot of deck building and I knew I had cards, but I didn't know where they were. And I was just buying them. I was buying more copies of cards that I knew I had because it was more of a pain to go look for it than it was to just do it. So partially I got rid of all the chaff. I had so much fucking chaff. I gave away 5,000 cards.
Really?
Yeah.
What'd you give them to? Who'd you give them to?
So actually at first I was going to just donate them to a school or something. Spread that magic love, but then I was like, oh, but I gotta find a school. I gotta find somebody who's gonna take it. I gotta do all this stuff. And I was like, maybe if I just put this on Facebook Marketplace, somebody will take it. And within 5 minutes, somebody hit me up. I put it up for $20, and somebody hit me up and was like, "Yo, can I'm down. I'm gonna do some kitchen table magic."
I want to, support a school, support some charitable donations, but
Yeah,
$20 is $20.
bill in my back pocket just be such a better gift to myself.
Yeah, and so that's exactly what I did.
Dude, best $20 ever spent. Did you scan the chaff? Did you pull out commons and uncommons that are spicy?
Oh yeah. I did do that. I went through and I was I even pulled out stuff that isn't that great, but things that I knew I would use in Commander. So I looked through everything. So when I say it's chaff, it was fucking trash.
Dookie chaff. Yeah.
5 mana 3/3s.
Yeah. Lots of 5 mana 3/3s and stuff that you just don't use. It we're fun to draft or have at a point. But I was I literally will never use these. So
the last card in a draft that just gets handed to you and you're like, well, I guess this is mine now, and I have no choice about it.
I own
or
this.
every pack I've ever opened that I'm I don't want 10 of these cards, or I don't want all 15 of these cards, but I'd keep it anyway.
The ones where you've looked straight to the rare, literally probably cards you never looked at while opening the pack.
That's literally what it was.
Just throwing the rest right in the trash.
But that dude was so excited, and that honestly felt good too. Even though he was paying me money for it, he was so hype. Because his collection grew pretty big that day.
Exactly,
when I say 5,000 cards, I'm not kidding. It was 5,000 cards.
That's wild. I'm very emotionally attached to my chaff.
Oh,
yeah, me too.
I don't have that problem at all.
I have it pretty sorted by color in one of those 6-row
I had it by
boxes. Set. And man, there's some old shit in there from college that is a Dookie trash card. A 3 mana or I was going to say a 3 mana 5/5. That's a good card. A 5 mana 3/3.
Let me tell you a couple of cards that I did keep that are trash, but I was I'm going to keep this.
Is it your entire Grenzo deck?
The first is Zurin Orb. It says sacrifice a land.
OP.
You gain 2 life.
Zurin Orb is busted, dude.
And this is just a meme that we have. We were
it's also
Zurin Orb
actually busted.
It's pretty good. So I'll explain that meme. So for a while, I had a Keurig deck that I was this deck is high power. And I pretty much always sucked ass with it. Genuinely, the list was a good Keurig combo deck, but I just always fucking played it like trash. And one game we had, I played Zurin Orb. And the only thing I could do was sack my lands to gain life. And I kept doing that. And at the end of the game, I just was sacking lands. And everyone was like, he's going off Zurin Orb. It's OP. So no, it's a little meme for us.
For the fans, he didn't really go off.
I didn't go off.
I did just get rocked by a Zurin Orb. Pat has a deck that runs Zurin Orb in a
effectively,
really effectively, because it's with Titania, Defender of Argoth, where I think it's pretty much whenever a land dies, you can.
Yeah, you get a 5/3 green elemental creature token.
He played Zurin Orb and was okay, so he'd been ramping all game. He was I can gain 30 life and make 15 5/3s whenever I want to. And we were all oh, okay, Zurin Orb.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the thing you didn't consider is that Pat's a better deck builder than me.
This is true.
Yeah. Pat's kind of a better deck builder than all of us.
Yeah, he's kind of a
makes such
cracked deck
spicy-
builder.
Yeah, his decks
He
are
does
always
make spicy
fucking
brews,
crazy, man.
for sure. But the other one I wanted to mention was a yoked ox. So I have a yoked ox.
Yo.
It's an 0/4 creature ox that's 1 white to play. It's hollow, and Mike gave me this, so like it was definitely in my Chaff, and like I saw it and I was like, I can't get rid of the yoked ox. Like you just can't do that.
You're kind of a yoked ox, Tony.
You know.
Tony's fucking jacked. People may not know that.
True.
No, it's true.
My
It's true.
forearms are large, but that's about it.
Yeah, your forearms are fucking crazy. Tony's a rock climber. Just throwing that out.
And you know. But anyway,
He's fucking cranking it.
the moral here, kids, is that scanning your collection feels great. I got rid of like all the other stuff. It did take a while, and the app that I used wasn't the best. Like
What do you use?
but there isn't a better thing. I used the TCG player scanning app. The biggest issue I had was all the black cards.
Dude, preach, dude.
Literally every single black
It's
card
like-
I had to manually enter, and I was like,
Yeah.
fuck this shit. But anyway, that's my story about my shit.
Well, I
Scanning
love it.
Feels
Thank you,
good.
Tony. That was great to hear. Sort your cards, people. Donate your chaff.
Or don't. Just love that history. Just
Yeah, or
love
don't
that.
donate your
Just
chaff.
let it sit in a box that you don't look at. It's all good. Whatever brings you joy.
And sometimes when you need that card, you just sift through all of the cards that you've ever owned, and then you finally find it. And it's the best fucking feeling.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't find it, and you're like, "Fuck me, I'll just buy this 1 cent card."
Yeah,
Never
but you
mind.
end up with like 4 half-built decks whenever you do that too. So it's like this nice side benefit where it's like, oops, I pulled out all these great cards on this one theme.
That's the
True.
worst, man. You start
I
going
love
through it and
that.
you're like, oh, this looks good. This looks good. And then I make a little pile of that. And then I find the pile later on. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? Why was this here?
I have to sort all these cards now.
And what was I even thinking on the day?
Yeah. Well, what do we talk about here? Do we talk about like insurance? Is this an insurance podcast?
This is
The howling insurance mine. Yeah, we talk about salt.
great
on
rates
this
coming to you
podcast.
live from.
This is a podcast about salt. We're going to be talking about salty stories. We hope you guys enjoyed our little extended preamble. And yeah, now we're going to get into it.
But Sam, what's salt?
Thanks, Tony. Great question. You know, salt is frustrations in the game. It is when you are getting kind of angry at the game state, maybe getting a little angry at your opponents. Salt can also be somebody who's kind of being a jerk at the table, bringing the vibe down. Their salt can make you salty. You know, there's a lot of different flavors of salt in Magic the Gathering.
It's also when you like scan a card and like an app tells you that your card's worth like $70, and then you're like freaking out and you're like, yeah, and then you realize it's like captured the wrong
the wrong version.
printing, and so it's like fucking 11 cents. That was
Dude,
salt for
happened to
me.
me a lot, especially with those mystery boosters foils. It would be
Yes.
like, oh, you have an original like Mirrodin foil. And I was like, no, I don't. They're like, oh, it's worthless.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of weird old foils are worth a lot of money. I've got a foil Thorn Elemental from like 7th edition or something.
Oh, yeah. That
And
was
it's
like a
like-
promo card.
It was like $7 or $8. I was
Yeah.
like, sick. Let's go.
Yeah, that's a
That
classic
card
in there.
sucks.
Yeah,
but
that card sucks ass.
I kept it.
Thorn
Let's go.
Elemental's fine.
Get out of here, Mike.
Bro, please.
Bro, please. Go
Thorn
on, bro.
Elemental is so good.
So this is going to be a slightly different episode. As I'm sure you can tell from the title of the podcast today, this is a mail time episode. So we are not delving into those salty, salty minds. You have brought the salt to us, delivered it in a nice package, and we're going to rip it open like it's Christmas Day, pull out that salt, and, complete the metaphor.
Solid.
Now, do you get salt for being on the nice list or the naughty list, Sam?
It depends. I've definitely been gifted salt, and I've definitely gifted salt to people, like artisanal, like truffle salt. I've definitely given my mom some truffle salt for Christmas.
Oh, we're going beyond. I thought you just meant like you've gifted salt, and I was like, you've gifted me a lot of salt.
That is true.
I didn't realize we meant like real salt.
Yeah, like real physical salt. I've definitely given it away.
I've definitely done that too.
Yeah. Future branding for us.
Yeah.
We're gonna give away.
Yeah, we're gonna partner.
Salt.
I've always said this. We should find some like random,
like a real salt company.
Yeah, and like,
dude, there's a local one where I live. Like, it's good salt too.
Fundy salt from the Sea of Fundy, Bay of Fundy,
the Bay of Fundy.
Bay, yeah, it's a bay. It's not a sea. Up in Canada, it's fucking lit. It was real good.
Wow, we should do that. Mike is like, fucking wrap it up, guys. All right, let's get into it, guys.
Let's.
Here's the salt that never faults. It makes me want to tap my vault. When it comes, I must exalt salt.
I'm telling you just got to take that little bit now and just like
record it and just insert
add some like weird sound effects. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, just like look up the Blues Clues song on YouTube and then cut the lyrics out and just directly put that on top of it. There's no way that would have negative impacts.
I'm sure there's a karaoke version of the Blues Clues song that has no lyrics. That's how I make all my other stuff. Pro tip. All right, let's get into it, guys. This is enough jibber jabbing. Our first bit of mail today comes to us from Instagram. This is from one of our Instagram friends. And this comes to us from Lotus Cobra Commander. And the post says, "Hey guys, really loving your podcast. I have a submission for you." Hey, thank you. I was playing casually with a regular play group, and I was playing Vito the Dusk Rose as my commander. One player had a creature with infect with one of the swords that gave it protection from black, and he had already attacked me to give me some poison counters. Because I was playing mono black, I couldn't deal with the creature and opted for player removal. I cast a blood tribute to make him lose half his life, then tapped Vito to gain that much life, triggering Vito, and targeted him to lose the other half, knocking him out of the game. I admit it was greasy, but the response was incredible. Being the first to get knocked out, he got super salty, threw some choice words at the play, got up, packed his stuff, and went home. I went on to win within a few more rounds, maybe 15, 20 minutes later. He could have stuck around for another game, as it didn't drag on too long after he got knocked out. Was the 2-card combo too harsh?
Whew. No.
Never.
I don't think it was too harsh. I think it was spicy. But I do think it's so unpredictable how long a game can last. So I don't blame him for leaving.
Yeah, I don't blame him for the leaving, I guess.
I do.
No, that's a lie. I do. I blame this person for the leaving.
Not to like want to sit and watch the rest of the game. Like I would be annoyed in that scenario too. And I would be like, I don't want to watch you play. Like, I don't want to watch you guys play when you knock me out first.
Well, that's because you're rude.
But it's like, it's exactly what the commander wants to do, right? Like the commander is sitting there like, I'm going to gain a bunch of life and then make you lose it.
Oh, totally. Like, I think he was fully within his rights as far as like playing the game, like doing the things. I just mean like, I do see how for that person, like getting knocked out, like you might want to be like, all right, I would feel the salt. I'm not saying it's right, but I know I would feel salt in that scenario. But he was asking for it. He swung at him with fucking infect.
Yeah,
exactly. I think it's totally appropriate. You were about to get knocked out and you were like, well, I don't have creature removal. I don't have artifact removal. I'm going to remove the player. Like, that's totally reasonable.
Yeah.
The thing that sticks out to me with this person packing up their shit and leaving, these people are obviously playing in person, right? And to me, it's like when I'm playing in person, my tolerance for this kind of stuff goes way, way up because I've spent the time to drive and hang out with people and play in person. Whereas if it's like totally different situation from playing over webcam, it's 10:30, 11 already. I'm kind of tired. If I get knocked out early, I might just be like, all right, guys, like I'm going to hang it up here. I'm going to go to bed. But if I've taken the time out of my day to hang out with people in person and like make an afternoon of it, I'm not leaving in a huff, man. Just bust out your phone and, you know, like there's other, if you need to occupy 15 to 20 minutes of your time, there's other shit you can do.
Yeah.
Bring your Game Boy.
Bring
Or
that
just
Game Boy.
sit there like playing politics, like as a removed player, play politics trying to get the veto player dead. Like
Oh,
you can
man.
do such stupid stuff if
Yeah.
I'm not advocating for that necessarily, but like there's so many things you can do besides leaving.
I'm definitely guilty of some backseat coaching when I get knocked out of a game early.
Yeah.
Some, he says.
Just a little bit. It's all in good fun.
Also, like if this player just showed that they can knock a player out in a turn, right? It's like how many more turns do you think it's really going to be before they can show that they can do that to all the other players at the table? Like
Definitely.
I would expect a quick game after I get knocked out by a pretty solid combo like this. I will say I think the question here is, was this too harsh? If you want to follow TCG players' recommendation, they say that the fair way, quotes, is to give your creatures lifelink. And then it says the unfair way is to cast Exquisite Blood and set off infinite cycle of life gain for you and life loss for your opponents.
Yeah.
So this isn't exactly that, but I think like people do often get pretty salty on these like really strong effects that are really hard to interact with. Like you lose a bunch of life, I gain a bunch of life isn't something that's like really easy to jump into to interact with. So that kind of stuff is going to draw more salt from people at your table.
Yeah, definitely. I think 2-card combos in general can bring out some salt because there are so few points of interaction. Obviously, like the classic 2-card combo that's really overpowered is Demonic Consultation or Tainted Pact and Thassa's Oracle. This isn't anywhere near that, frankly. I mean, Exquisite Blood and Sanguine Bond is the other like 2-card combo that can be done. And I don't really think that that's egregiously powerful. Usually you have a couple turns with one sitting out on the table before the other one hits. And then you do need that life gain or life loss trigger, whatever the fuck it is. You do need that trigger to happen to set it off. So there are moments of interaction there. Maybe you don't have the interaction in your hand. It just happens. Like sometimes you don't have the removal, and sometimes you just lose. Like that's how every game is. I think it's good. I mean, it's great. And if it happened really early in the game and the game did go on for like another 45 minutes, I might be like, all right, can you guys just like wrap it up? But I don't mind hanging until the end of a game and seeing it through and just kind of watching how it ends up.
It's easier for you to take notes when you're dead too, Sam.
Yeah,
So
that is also
good.
true. I also obsessively take notes and record every single turn that we play. So I do feel obligated to stay to the end of a game.
Well, what are we vibing? Do we have a salt rating?
I'm going to give this half a shaker because depending on where you look at this, the shaker is half full or the shaker is half empty.
All right, I'll give you that. That was decent. That was good enough.
Decent. Good enough.
It was trash.
Yeah, what listeners don't know is that Mike and I have to give multiple salt ratings every episode, and only the ones that Tony thinks are decent actually make it in. Our recording times are like multiple hours sometimes.
Just giving salt rating metaphors. That would suck.
And Tony's like, not good enough. Give me another one.
Do it again.
What you thinking, Mike?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have
nothing?
anything. No, I got nothing. You did it. You knocked it out of the park. There's just no way of topping that. So.
Well, thanks. That's all I wanted to hear.
Yeah. Good job, Sam. But do we have any other posts we could read?
What a smooth transition. We do. Our next post comes to us from a Gmail submission from our buddy Guillaume's Kitchen.
Hey.
What's up, Eric? What's going on, dude?
Pew, 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 pew.
And he knows the vibe very well. His email submission was titled, Guy is Cradling Deez Nuts.
This is the beauty of like not really looking at those emails. Like,
Yeah, it's a
fresh
surprise
take for
for you
me
guys.
feels good. Feels real good.
All righty. The email says, Hi, guys. Here's a salty story that happened about a year ago involving Gaia's Cradle. It might be a touch lengthy, and some of the details are probably missing. Nonetheless, I hope you enjoy. Guillaume. Well, thank you. We will enjoy it. I'm playing Spell Table one evening with two friends, both streaming separately on Twitch. Friend one has just one viewer who starts giving tips and comments on our plays and asks to join after the current game, to which we agree with open arms. He joins our Discord server and we proceed to discuss power level. He says he has a few decks on hand that, in his words, aren't that strong, including Dargo Jessica Partner and 5-color Niv Mizzet. It's also brought up at some point that his friends don't really want to play with him anymore, so he's glad we let him join as our fourth person.
That's a bad sign.
Yeah.
I'm seeing red flags.
I was like, dun, dun, dun.
We all choose fairly casual decks and shuffle up. New guy runs Dargo Jessica and ends up swinging Dargo at me for lethal turn 4 with Guillaume as my only blocker. Wow, playing that Guillaume deck. Fucking love it. The salt got the better of me, and I decide to let Dargo annihilate me to his shock. I promptly excuse myself for a drink and a sanity break. New player ends up picking everyone else off one by one, and making the mistake of being polite, we shuffle up for another.
Ooh.
It was around this time we noticed his tournament champ playmat. This man busts out his casual Golos deck, pre-ban, and proceeds to turn 2 Gaia's Cradle into Grim Monolith. After we were finished picking our jaws up off the floor, I ask, are those legit? To which he replies, yes, he bought or traded for both of them. Amidst clenched fists and many hushed DMs between the three of us, for the rest of the game, we are subjected to 30-minute turns of Deadeye Navigator plus Golos shenanigans while he digs and fails to find his win con. I insist privately that we kick the guy, but friend 1 insists every single trigger be played out to completion. Friend 2 digs for his maze's end to end our misery. Eventually, friend 2 succeeds in nuking our archenemy with Door to Nothingness. He departs the stream, the server, while we finish the game, roasting him for the rest of the night. Was this guy as bad as we made it seem? What would you have done different? Thanks.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that sounds, well, first of all, mega props to crushing someone with Door to Nothingness, especially someone who's kind of pub stomping, to like literally show them the door out of the pod and be like, you can leave now, is pretty amazing.
That is great.
And another set of kudos to being open to having like a rando jump in your pod. You never really know what you're going to get, right?
Yeah.
Especially someone who's like, hey, my friends don't want to play with me anymore. Like, their friends don't want to play with them anymore. That's
That's
not
a bad
good
sign. Yeah. I feel like this is also one of those cases where like the attitude that this person has matters so much. Like if someone shows up and is going to be the fourth person in your pod and they're like, oh, I've got some kind of weak decks, and then they stomp and then they're like, oh, my bad, and they pull out a pre-con and it's like totally fine from them.
Yeah.
Like that is so different than the guy that's like, oh yeah, these are all really bad decks, and then just pub stomps for like 20 minutes. It's just like it's like so clearly misaligned with what the point is that everyone's going for. It's like, we're here for a fun time. You busted out your tournament champion playmat and your
I love that.
your Gaia's Cradle. Like,
there's also something that can happen sometimes, which I do really like, which is when someone has one of those really OP decks and they're like, hey, this deck is really fucking strong, but do you guys want to like see it go off in a game? I might be like, hell yeah, like show me your crazy spice, you know? Like if I'm in the mood to like just see a deck go off in a really cool way or see like a unique build or combo go off in an interesting way that I haven't seen, I do enjoy that sometimes. Especially if a friend is like, yo, I just built this spicy deck. Like, let me, like, it's going to be a little strong, but like, let me play it against you.
like if you're feeling just a little subby.
Exactly. Like, fucking combo me, daddy.
And there it is, folks.
Oh,
This is
man.
also like, I feel like this is like stewed with Guillaume, you know, like this is clearly like lodged as one of those memories
Stewed
of
in
like,
Guillaume's kitchen.
yeah, it's stewed. It's been brewed up in the kitchen. It's like clearly something that is just lodged in like the collective memory of this play group of like, do you guys remember when that random showed up and dropped like $5,000 of cards on the table and beat us in 5 turns?
Yeah, I could see this becoming like a mythical story to tell in their pod.
Yeah.
Like this random dude rolls in and just crushes them, and they manage to kill him with a door to nothingness.
Yeah, with a door to nothingness.
Yeah, it feels like the prime like memory of past, but not fun in the present.
Type 2 fun. But I love that because like that's one of the best parts about celebrating these salty moments too. Is like they're just so memorable. Even if they suck in the moment, they're so memorable and they're so fun to look at in the past. So I love that even a year later he's remembering this.
Hey, Mike, will you define type 2 fun for us? I've heard you say that in a previous podcast episode, and I'm not sure all of our listeners know what that is.
Yeah. So type 1 fun is like you show up and you just straight up have fun. Something is fun. You enjoy it. That's type 1.
So me.
Yeah. Tony. Always
Tony's
enjoyable.
Type 1 fun.
Yeah. Tony, big fan of type 1 fun.
Tony's like type 5 fun.
Sam, can you define type 5 fun for our listeners? I don't think.
Barely ever fun.
Super lame.
Mean to me.
Stinky.
Yeah.
Type 2 fun, on the other hand, is it sucks in the moment. You're really not into it. You hate it. You don't like it. It can even just be kind of like neutral and you don't like it. But then looking back on it, you're like, that kind of thing, that was so good. It's like if you go camping and get rained on and it's like a really harrowing experience. You're like, oh, this is awful. And then like later you're driving home from that experience and you're like, that was kind of goofy. Like we were scared for our lives. Like, it's so thunder was really close.
Oh, it's like Tony. It's like when we were driving back from my cabin in the Adirondacks and my radiator blew up and we had to drive like 20 miles an hour on the side of the road for like 40 miles.
With the heat on to try and keep the temperature of your car lower. Because it was overheating the engine so bad.
And we didn't have any cell phone signal. Good times.
In hindsight, that sounds like a great time.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad I wasn't there.
In the car in the summer with the heat blasting.
Oh, man. And it was like, there's this stretch going up to the Adirondacks of like 15 to 20 miles where you just don't have cell phone signal. And my parents are like worriers. And they're always like, there's that stretch where you don't have cell phone signal. I'm like, nothing's going to happen. And that is where it happened. So of course I was like, oh my God, I can't even call anyone. Like, this is exactly what my parents warned me about the last 20 years of my life. Well, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. That's awesome.
You're welcome.
So what's the salt rating? What are people vibing on this one?
This would definitely be like nearing a full shaker for me. If some random person came in and was kind of like ruining my evening of playing games, I'd be pretty frustrated for sure. I mean, granted, if I was in this group, we did kind of invite this upon ourselves. There was a red flag, but it's hard because I think there's like a social pressure where you've asked somebody and then they drop a red flag on you. You can't necessarily be like, oh, never mind. And someone who's like watching your Twitch stream.
Yeah.
You got to kind of extend that goodwill and like give that person a shot, and maybe it just fucking backfires like crazy.
I was about to say, having streamed occasionally, when someone is in your stream and is like chatting with you about what's going on, it's great. And then
totally.
Then to find out in a couple games with them that they're actually kind of a little salt lord, it would be terrible. It would be so sad. That's like where the big salt of this would happen for me, is like I would have all my hopes up that like, oh, this is a viewer, they're gonna be so nice, they're gonna stop by in my stream another time, and then it's like, no, they just wanted to show up and stomp some people.
Well, not everyone can be like Guillaume's Kitchen or Lotus Cobra Commander or our third listener that we haven't mentioned yet. Not everyone can be like our awesome listeners.
Hey.
And who is that third listener, Sam?
Ooh, man, that segue. Ooh, fucking spicy.
That one nice.
That is extremely good.
Nice like ice.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Do people say that?
You did.
I didn't know.
Don't worry, Tony. I'll cut that out. So
that
won't make
it. Yeah.
No, I definitely won't.
Wait, I do know what the salt rating for this story is.
Give it
this
to
is
us.
This is the salt that you put on the ice in the ice cream maker. You don't want to eat it. You don't want to eat it. It's gross. But after the fact, it's actually left you with a delightfully delicious experience that you can look back on.
Ooh, Mike.
That was spicy.
Man. Mike,
Like that.
So impressed.
So who is this third listener named?
So impressed. So our third listener is actually somebody whose post that we had on previously on this show. It's our friend, the Mighty Battle Squid. So the Mighty Battle Squid has come back and sent us a salty confessional, which is one of my favorite things. You know, we get a lot of salty situations, salty stories, but a salty confessional just hits in a different way. Love it. Love these. And they say, I beseech the Council of Salt to judge me and weigh my salty sins inflicted upon my playgroup who was just trying to have fun on Commander Night.
It's so good. I love the start. I'm sorry.
Man, ain't we all been there before? I accept now that I completely took over game night, not realizing how much stronger my decks were than the others, because I'm used to having a player or two in the game who can and will focus me when I start setting up and or popping off. I took their contributions for granted and did not control enough for their absence. I only made myself look worse as I tried to remedy it with half-done measures. To begin with, I played a Winota deck that I thought had been properly nerfed for my power level, but it turned out to be a disaster after all. Yep. That is definitely a mistake.
Yeah.
We're just talking in our last episode about how crazy Winota is.
Winota's borderline got those like Turgid levels of like you can't really make it
Yeah.
like
Casual
that
Winota
weak.
is still insane.
Like it just like what does it pop out? It's like you get stuff on
you attack with a non-human and you pop out a human from your deck.
So if you make it truly human tribal, that's how you nerf it. Like
to just never get a trigger off
yeah,
of it.
you never get the trigger.
That's not playing
It's
your
just
deck.
pure humans.
The salt started when I used a combination of Mirror of the Forebears and Angel of Destiny to completely wipe out everyone at the table over the course of 2 short turns. For any interaction, I had responses of my own, like Ephemeral Shields or Brave the Elements. The next game, everyone conceded around turn 5 or 6. After my intentionally slow start quickly spiraled out of control. I kept a hand with some basics, Windbrisk Heights, Marble Diamond, Aurelia Exemplar of Justice, and some other angel that I thought wasn't that scary. However, I top-decked a Soul Ring turn 2, which was soon followed by a turn in which Windbrisk Heights cheated out Gisela Blade of Gold Knight, and one of my Winota triggers immediately flipped over Blade Historian, giving everything double strike. Suddenly, my 4 power creatures that are going unblocked due to a lack of flyers on their side hurt a lot worse when the damage was quadrupled. God damn.
Wow. A 4/4 doing freaking 16 damage.
Yeah, right? Yeah, because everything's getting doubled with Gisela. And then double strike, insane. I tried to make it up by pulling out different decks, but those didn't make me look much better in the eyes of the playgroup. Kumena, Tyrant of Orazka, similarly took over as I copied creatures like Mero Regery and Master of Waves with Renegade Doppelganger and Spark Double. They asked each other if anyone had board wipes, and one player admitted that they just had one in hand. I was in blue, so obviously I had answers, even if they managed to pull a second board wipe, so I let the table know, and they scooped. Final game of the night. Veyran, Vorse of Duality, stormed off after a sudden breakthrough, which creates a treasure cast while Mirrorwing Dragon was out, which triggered twice because of Veyran. Led to enough treasures in play to Underworld Breach and to cycle through my triggers until I won the game that turn with a gajillion Mirrorwing Dragon tokens created by a Rionia Fire Dancer cast with some of the treasures. Well, spicy. So as to not repeat that night, I'm trying to really restrict myself with my next few decks for nights like this. I'm thinking something like Alesha Who Smiles at Death with Obosh the Prey Piercer as a companion. There are a lot fewer good creatures with power 2 or less and odd mana value that will benefit both legendaries' abilities than you can think. And needing to run 3+ CMC ramp is sure to slow it down. I can't run most of the good interaction in Mardu colors this way either. Any other suggestions and guidelines from the Council of Salt would mean a lot. I'm truly sorry for what happened that night and hope those players will eventually forgive me.
This is not your fault. It's not your fault. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah,
This
we
is
forgive
such
you.
we do. This is such an example to me of like a deck is so contextual as to whether or not it's okay. Like you play those same decks when everyone else's power levels are just a little higher, and it's perfect and like a way more fun game. There's way more interaction, and like this player's already looking to build a weaker deck too. You're doing all the right things, Battle Squid. May your 10 tentacles find the perfect things to cast. I don't know.
Sounds like you had a spicy night, though.
Yeah, it sounds like a fucking
definitely,
dope night of
definitely.
playing. I mean, I will echo what Mike says. Like the context for a deck, really, it doesn't need much to make it too powerful. If I'm playing my Gave combo deck with my pod, they're going to be like, don't fucking let Sam get any combo pieces on the board. Don't let him cast Gave. We cannot let this happen. So I am kind of used to playing into that, where even though my deck is a little bit more powerful than maybe what the pod's bringing, very similar to what the Mighty Battle Squid said, I'm used to that attention bringing down my power level a bit because I'm getting focused a bit. If I go to a pod where it's a full new pod and no one really knows my Gave deck, well, now it's going to be a little bit more powerful. I think if you judge the power of a deck, it really does change depending on who you're playing with, what your meta is, what the play group is, even if they're just playing the exact same decks list for list. There's also totally variance just in playing a deck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you didn't know you were going to top deck a Soul Ring and turn that into a really spicy play. And you didn't know you were going to flip out a Blade Historian from your deck and immediately like quadruple up on the damage that you were dealing. Like that is just variance in a deck. Sure, that stuff is in there and you built that into your deck because they're really good strategies. But that type of variance, you don't know if it's going to come up in a game. And the stars can align in such a way that your deck just pops the fuck off. And it can also happen the other way, where your stars misalign and you don't even get your like third land drop. Like I think we've all been on the receiving ends of both sides of that lucky coin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as for like the question that they're asking of what are some ways to tone down the deck or potentially build a new deck rather that's like a little more at the right power level, I think Battle Squid, you're on exactly the right track there. Picking some themes or just starting with deck building decisions that are not based on your power level is actually a really good way of limiting the power level. Like if you're deciding that you're going to run thematic, like odd costed things, like that's not necessarily impacting power level. It's just impacting like deck game plan. Or like if you're deciding that you don't want to run any instants or something, like you just, want to not have any instants in your deck. It probably will make your deck worse, but like you can choose these thematic things or just like deck decisions that lower the power level without being an intentional twist on the power level itself.
Yeah, I think some of those self-imposed rules and guidelines and self-imposed restrictions is really what I'm trying to say. I think that can lead to, one, a lot of creativity in your deck building, and two, kind of nerf your power level a little bit just by circumstance.
Yeah.
Like I have an Alesha deck. So it's kind of funny that the Mighty Battle Squid is thinking of Alesha. And my Alesha deck is humans only. And I try to maximize the number of legendary humans in the deck as well. And it's kind of been a labor of love. I've had this deck for years and years, and I've been slowly improving it. I think really only recently have I tuned it up to the point where it's like a good deck. There were a lot of times where it would do cool things, and I would really enjoy that. And I was getting this really unique synergy off of it. But I always struggled to close the game out. And only recently has it actually started to do really well. But I still stick to those restrictions. And it's not a deck where I can just put in the many combos that an Alesha deck wants, because I don't really allow myself to do that.
Yeah. And the other thing is you still should just goldfish it. At the end of the day, that's going to be your best way of getting a sense of how strong the deck is. You can impose all kinds of deck building restrictions. You can like have plans. You can cut some certain strong cards. But if you're just like naturally solid at building a decently synergistic deck, you might end up with something that's still like a little too strong. And so if you goldfish it, if you just play some dummy hands and figure out, what turns it's really starting to go off and be impactful, it'll be easier to figure out where it needs to fit into your meta.
Tony, how do you feel about this?
I think I mostly agree with everything you guys are saying. I don't have anything like unique beyond it. I do think the key piece, if you're looking to build decks and try and deliberately have it be at a lower power level, like finding fun, unique themes is just like a great way to do that. And like, you'll find such interesting cards. Like that's the cool part about that too. Like you start deck building and you find like weird shit that you haven't like ever looked for before, because the 10 cards that are usually automatically slotted into like all those standard kind of builds, like you don't use anymore. And so like it really opens up a lot of possibilities. So
I mean, you kind of went through this recently with your Rafine deck, right, Tony? Because Tony, like we talk about this a lot. Tony is our winningest player when we play casual.
Stop.
He makes really spicy decks, and they're very powerful, and they pop off in ways that are hard to stop. So I think with your Rafine build, you kind of went out and you were like, hey, I'm going to like try to build this to the commander instead of building it to a specific power level.
Yeah. And I think the thing I liked about it too is that I normally I'm trying to not do combat wins. And so like this deck, that's the way you win. Like there is no other path to victory in this deck other than combat. So for me, like that opened up a lot of shit that I don't normally see. But there's some stuff that I always typically have. But I think like my removal package is more of where I found like a lot of interesting stuff. Because I mean, as we know, I also don't tend to run those. But there's a lot of unique stuff because I don't like running all the standard things. And so like finding stuff that fit into the pattern of what the deck wanted to do, which is a lot of like discardy shenanigans stuff, was like more interesting.
I think other things, I mean, just general advice for depowering a deck: removing tutors removes consistency, and consistency makes a really powerful deck even more so. Reducing the fast mana that you have. I mean, maybe that arcane signet becomes a commander sphere. There's like a lot of little things that you can do. What you're really trying to do is, let's say you have this Winota deck. It typically wins from a range of turn 5 to 7, right? You can build your deck in such a way where you're still running similar creature packages, but now you've shifted that win from 5 to 7 to like 6 to 8, 7 to 9. You're moving the turn that you're trying to win on back by running some slightly slower strategies and things like that. You can still run those powerful cards, but it's sort of this situation where you want to kind of tune it back a little bit. I will say it's hard to do that with cards like Winota. Like we said, it's just a really powerful commander, regardless of how you build it. Unless you fill it with like total dookie humans, like it's going to be good.
Even if you do that, like there's so much value to be said about like how much you gain. Like when you pop out stuff for free, like that's such value add. Like winning turns of commander usually are when people are starting to generate like 12 mana and like do stuff like, and like that just happens. It's like, oh, I swung with 3 creatures and guess what? I pooped out 3 more.
Exactly.
And like their total like CMC wound up being like 6 or 7. Like that's a lot of value just added to the board.
Even things like Veyron, Voice of Duality. I mean, that's a commander that copies triggers and, can potentially, I think, copies spells too. Am I right, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a creature that copies spells and triggers. And, that again is also kind of free value. You're getting, if you have an ability that triggers, it's associated with a card of a certain cost and you're copying it. Now it's basically like you have 2 of those, and it's like you got value equal to the cost of the ability that you're copying, So I am seeing a theme here with like getting kind of that free value. So maybe steering away from commanders that do that kind of stuff. That might also be a really good way to tune things down.
which for the record is like story of my life. Like I love those kinds of decks where I'm like cheating shit in. Like that's everything that I do.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what it tends to be powerful. And so like it does cool shit. But
yeah, like I remember when you played your Obeka deck the first time and just fucking crushed our asses with like tons of free value. And we were like, well, guess we're just gonna die.
Yeah. That felt good. I like crushed pretty hard with that deck to the point that I like just stopped playing it. Like,
yeah, bring it back.
I liked that deck a lot, and I don't play it anymore.
Rio Becca. I think the last couple times you played it too, we just were really abusive. We just like killed it.
There's a lot of like when you see it happen, you're like, I don't want to see it again. And so then everybody just like kind of like shuts you down.
Yeah.
Well, I think that goes into that variance thing as well, where if like the first showing of a deck is incredibly powerful, it puts a taste in your mouth every other time you see the deck where you're like, I can't let that happen again. You know, whereas if the first time you played Obeka, you just dirtled for 6 turns, we'd be like, yeah, that deck's okay. Maybe sometimes it pops off.
So what's the salt rating on this bad boy?
This is, you brought some prosciutto to a ham fight.
Hey.
The concept of a ham fight is amazing. I want to be invited to the next ham fight.
I'll let you know. I didn't know you were interested. I've been hosting them. I'll send you the invite to the next one.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah, you just accidentally brought a little extra salt. And next, you're already working on the correctly cured ham, so don't worry about it.
I got nothing to add to that.
Yeah,
that's just perfection.
There's nothing else to say. That's amazing. Mike does it again. Does it again, folks.
That's why I was so sad when we almost didn't do it. I was like, no.
Well, I think it's that time, guys.
Oh shit! What time?
I think it's that time of the week. The time of the week that we look forward to every week. It's the time of the week where we say, Mike, what's the salty card of the week?
Mike.
Well,
it's a salty card of the week. Know that you love it. You know that you got it. It's a salty card of the week. It's a salty card of the week.
Thank you.
Salty card of the week.
I was really expecting you to break out into like some throat singing with like a 4-part tag there at the end. Like that would have been
be fucking amazing. There will definitely be a day where we sing a 4-part barbershop tag.
Hell yeah.
For this show.
I'm here for it.
We just have to bring Nick on.
Exactly. We got
better yet, make Pat do it with us.
We got voice part coverage. Does Pat sing?
No. That's why it would be so funny. I mean, I think he does. I don't know. Not a ton. Anywho, the salty card of the week this week is a good one. It is every week, but this one it's extra good.
Well, there's that one week where it's bad.
There was that one, and it wasn't good. This one is Smothering Tithe.
Oh, I know this card.
Yeah. It is 3 and a white for an enchantment that says, whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a treasure token. Tony, does this one make you salty?
That's a great question. You know, no one pays. No one pays for this. You don't pay 2. You fucking never pay 2 unless you're already winning and somehow have so much mana that you can pay. Like nobody fucking pays for that shit. So in part, it feels less bad because it's like expected. It's like, oh, they're just gonna get a bunch of mana. It's like you're like, it's just happening. If I can't remove it, it's just happening. And I never want to use my removal on it. It's one of those things that it just snowballs so quick because no one removes it, and they're like, well, they already have 10 mana. What does it matter if they get another 10?
There's a point where you just stop giving a shit. You're like, whatever. What's the difference between 10 and 20 mana? Like, who cares?
I feel like that is the salt I have with this card because that's always what it is for me. I'm just like, whatever. Like, do you win or do you not? Like, can I get to my turn now? Like, I'll just let it go through a few cycles and I'm like, whatever. Like, I don't do anything to remove it.
You
I
also
don't pay.
You also play Xyrus, Rafine, and Locust God.
Just tons of card draw, tons of card draw decks.
I'll say I think once or twice I've had it and like went to do a wheel of some sort and somebody removed it, and that's when I felt salty. So I was like, come on, like let me just have the thing.
Well, that's the right time to remove it, right? When like
It
a
is.
big draw spell hits, like you got it.
I'm not saying that's incorrect, but that doesn't make me less salty when it happens to me. And meanwhile, if I'm just like sitting at the table and somebody else has it and that's gonna happen, I'm like, it's also almost one of those things too where people almost forget. And like and you're like, oh, we all wheel. And it's like, oh, wait, we all wheel. Like, can somebody do anything about the tithe before this happens?
I think you're saying that because that literally happened in one of our games where Nick wheeled. Mike had out a smothering tithe and made a fuck ton of mana. And Nick was like, oh, I forgot about the smothering tithe. And we were like, what the fuck, dude? And then, surprise, Mike won on like the next turn.
Everyone was like, how dare you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sam, does this one make you salty?
It doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, I feel very similar to Tony. Like I really love this card. I love to play it. I have it in a lot of my decks. I think I have it in most of my decks. But it's just really, it's a super powerful effect, but it is really hard to pay that cost. It's very rare that people do, even in CDH, which we don't see it as much in CDH because it is a 4-mana enchantment. But when it does come up, I don't really see people pay for it, but it's sort of, you're more likely to.
Yeah.
Generally, I find if someone has like a soul ring, they're kind of willing to pay for it more often than not. Because it's, you know, it's like sort of, I already have this extra mana. Maybe it's not that big of a deal, but it is that thing where once someone gets like 6 or 7 treasures with it, people just stop giving a shit and they let you make treasures like crazy.
Yeah, totally.
The thing that I really don't like about Smothering Tithe is when there's a fucking Rhystic Study on the board and the two people make this like agreement where they're like, hey, I'll never pay for Rhystic Study if you never pay for Smothering Tithe. And they're like, yeah, I'll take that deal. And that deal almost always benefits the Smothering Tithe player. And I fucking hate it, man. I do not like that deal. Because then they just
it's not even a deal mana. Because they weren't gonna pay for it
the Rhystic
anyway.
Player's
like,
not gonna pay for it anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, the Rhystic player is not gonna choose to not draw cards.
Exactly.
No. And then the other person gets so much mana value and it just goes crazy. And not only are they not paying for the Rhystic Study, they're getting a treasure out of it. So a Rhystic Study, you know, you could evaluate Rhystic Study by saying every spell costs 1 additional mana, right? If you pay for it every single time. Well, if you don't pay, now it doesn't cost an additional mana. And if you get a treasure, well, now you're netting 2 mana in the other direction every time you cast a spell. So it's just this like crazy snowball of value. And for the other 2 people at the table, they're just like, they get nothing. You know, they're like, well, I guess this is happening. One of you is going to have a crazy grip of cards. One of you is going to be totally flooded with mana to have crazy turns.
The number of times that this has happened to me where there's like 2 Rhystics out or like a Smothering Tithe and a Rhystic, and I'm just sitting there being like, well, I'm just the schmo.
Yeah.
Is higher than I can count.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like I have this specific game in my mind where we were playing with my friend Gene, and I think it was Gene, Nick, and maybe you, Tony. And this was like a couple years ago. And Nick had a Rhystic Study and Gene had a Smothering Tithe. And they were like, let's make a deal. And they just kept drawing cards and being like, yeah, like making treasures. And we were just like, I was like, I'm going to lose the game. like this isn't a game where I can win anymore. This is a game where either Nick or Gene will win and Tony and I will lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Mike? Does this make you salty?
No, I don't think this one makes me salty. And I think I agree with everything you guys have said. It is really strong and no one wants to pay for it because you're effectively, you have to pay 2 to stop the other player from getting 1 mana. So it's just a really bad rate to ever like pay for this, even if it sometimes is the right call. If the entire table can unite to decide to do this, it just feels like really bad rate to have to pay 2 mana to stop 1 mana. But yeah, I play enough white that I really like this card. And I liked also that this card in some ways felt like one of the sort of the turning points as they experimented with more kinds of effects to give white. to kind of balance the color pie a little bit. And I think they've done a really good job of doing that in recent sets. Maybe even pushing it too far in some cases. We'll see. But I appreciate this as sort of the landmark card in my mind that sort of started that path as well.
Where does this sit on the list, Mike?
So this sits, give me a second.
While you're looking that up, I will say I do love the design of this card. I think that it's a really perfect design space for white, where it's like my opponent does something, I give them the option to pay a tax on it. And if they do or don't, I get some kind of benefit from it. Yeah. I love that design space for white. I think it's really, really fun.
So Tony, this one sits at 26, but it also lands pretty highly as one of like the most improved ones compared to last year's rating, where it was actually around 49. So this has moved up.
Improved as in it's moved up the list.
Yeah,
like people are saltier about it now.
People are more salty about this card now than they were in the past.
I wonder if those bitches are paying and we're just not. Like that's why they feel saltier.
Yeah. Well, we are seeing this trend with the new EDH rec list this year, where cards that have gone up in price, like staples that have gone up in price a lot, are saltier.
Yeah.
Like we saw it with Dockside, we saw it with Cyclonic Rift. Granted, those are salty cards and, have their own frustrations tied up with them. But this is another one where this card is really expensive. It's getting up there. I mean, do you have the price on hand for this, Mike?
Yeah, 21 right now, which is actually much less expensive than I thought it was.
Yeah, I thought it was like 30 or something. That's not too bad. But still, I mean,
still
above
pretty
a $5,
expensive.
$10 card, like it's still a lot.
Yeah, you can't fill a deck with cards like that. Or you can, but it gets ridiculously expensive.
Don't worry. Yeah. Wizards will reprint it. It'll be fine.
They did just reprint it, right? It just came out in double. It was in double masters.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. So
yeah,
a very accessible set for everyone.
I pulled one. I pulled one at Magic 30.
Yeah. Well, that's it for the salty card of the week. Fuck you, Sam.
Real quick thought experiment. Would you guys still play? Would you guys think that this card would be way better if it was only 1 mana versus 2 mana to stop the treasure?
Yeah. I would pay it way more frequently.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I think it'd be much easier to pay.
Yeah. It also is much easier to evaluate. Is it worse for me to have a mana or my opponent to have 1 mana? It's just way easier to evaluate that given a given board state. Like, how many cards do they have? Like, you can just figure that out all a lot better.
And it still would be powerful. It'd still pop off with a wheel and stuff like that. I mean, it still has a very similar effect with Rhystic Study, but 1 mana, maybe a little bit easier. Anywho. Well, thanks for the Salty Card of the Week segment, Mike. That was lovely. And thank you to our prospectors out there for catching up with us again this week, tuning in and listening to these salty stories. And thank you for sending these salty stories in to Lotus Cobra Commander, Guillaume's Kitchen, and the Mighty Battle Squid. We appreciate you guys sending us in these salty stories and salty confessionals so we could share them with the rest of the listenership out there. As always, you guys can find us on our Instagram and our Reddit, which are both The Howling Salt Mine. Find us on Twitter, if it still exists, at Howling Salt Mine. And if you'd like to send us a salty story and have it considered for a future mail time episode, send that to us at thehowlingsaltmine@gmail.com. And as always, we ask you to keep those stories short, sweet, and to the salt. I also want to say, Lua introduced it last week. I'm going to try to keep it going as best I can. If you guys are listening to us on Spotify, make sure you're subscribed. Please give us a 5-star rating if you can. That really does help. And the same goes for Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. We don't spend any money on advertising. We just have our social media presence out there. So if you guys have friends that you think might enjoy this podcast, ask them to listen, shoot our link around, and hopefully, you get to kind of share that love of the show with some close friends to you.
Yeah. Next time someone really tilts in your play group, say, "Oh boy, have I got a podcast for you." DM them a link.
But first, write down the story and send it to us.
Yeah. First, write the story down first.
Definitely. And we also want to shout out our amazing artist, JD Burnett. Devin is a tattoo artist in Asheville, North Carolina. If you guys are down there, get a tattoo from him. He's a super, super cool dude. Really awesome of him to make this amazing art for us. And, we just want to give him credit where credit's due. And it is due, baby.
Nice.
Thank you.
Is there also congrats to, we had a giveaway winner?
Yeah, Tony, we did just have a giveaway. And this was a giveaway on our Instagram. If you guys missed it, make sure you're following us on Instagram. That's where we're kind of the most active right now. We don't do a ton of giveaways, but we're hoping to do more and more in the future. This was for the Phyrexian secret layer and 5 of our salty tokens. And this one went to MTG Zinfig. MTG Zinfig, I hope that you are enjoying those. You should have them in hand by now. And hopefully you are confounding, confusing, and frustrating your friends with those awesome Phyrexian text praetors.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. And we will see you next week. Stay salty, and don't forget to draw an additional card during your draw step.
It's the Howling Salt Mine. The Howling Salt Mine.
But those didn't make me look fuck. But those
Didn't make me look much better.
Here's the
Blues mail lawsuit. Somebody sue us.
Oh, it's
mail
not.
time.
It's not.
Someone sue us.
No, it's not at all. Let me sing my song.